Good afternoon and welcome to our Smart Music Back to School webinar series. My name is Billy Lawler and I will be running everything in the background for today's session. Before we get started, I have just a couple of housekeeping notes for you. At the end of the webinar, we will provide a link to the certificate of attendance for the session. Please note the certificate of attendance will only be available for live attendees and not for the replay. If you have any questions for our presenter throughout the session, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our wonderful presenter for today. Peggy Rakas is a lifelong educator who taught instrumental music in the North Merrick schools on Long Island and is now an adjunct professor of music education at Hofstra University. She is also the founder of the Teaching Positivity, an organization that provides positive psychology workshops for educators across Long Island. Peggy, thank you so much for being with us today. I will let you take it from here.
Thank you very, very much, Billy. And thanks to all of you guys for spending your happy hour with the workshop. You are the truly dedicated. And if you're watching this on video, thank you for spending your time. And I have to also remember to thank Smart Music for this wonderful opportunity to spread my love of positive psychology with all of you guys. And a little shout out to another Smart Music clinician, Dr. Matthew Arau, forgive me if I'm saying that wrong, and his upbeat presentation that I just watched the other day that he also has in the Smart Music resources section. If you like this kind of stuff, you'll love his workshop. He's just great. We're two very, very similar minds here. All right, so I'm going to get started and talk about the motto of my company. And the company's motto is when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And the first time I ever heard that exact wording, I've heard it many times with other people, but that exact wording is from Max Planck, who was a German physicist. Excuse me, please don't ask me any questions about physics because I can barely say the word. Um, but he um, said this in regards to matter. So if I had a rock, I've got a rock in my hand and I've got this really, really solid rock. But then one day I learn about atoms and I start to learn that atoms are really just air. And now I look at my rock and my rock is now a bunch of air. It's just simply air. So the object in my hand has absolutely changed. Then the second person I saw who used that wording was Dr. Wayne Dyer. He was a motivational speaker, a self-help author. He sometimes, I think, took credit for those words, although I think it was really Max Planck who actually came up with that wording. And he is saying it in regards to our life and our work. If we simply can change the lens through which we look at the world, we can actually change what we see and we can change our lives. Einstein even weighed in on this, and Einstein asked, do you live in a hostile world or a friendly world? So he knew just how you look at things is basically how your life is going to be. And how can we change our perspective so that we see things through a positive lens? So that is where we are going. I'm going to share my screen right now, and we're going to get started. And all right. If this is happy hour, so if any of you guys do want to pull up a little glass of wine, you're welcome to. I'm sorry I can't join you, but afterwards I could. All right. So we're going to get started here. And we're going to talk about, in our workshop, we're going to talk about how can we keep our students positive and motivated after what's been a really trying time, especially for arts education. How can we create a positive oasis for our students? What does positive psychology say that will actually help us for our surroundings? And how can we keep ourselves motivated and positive? I probably should have put that one number one. We have so many concerns. How to deal with COVID, classroom teachers, aides, and administrators who are extremely stressed. So very stressed. Students who are so stressed, although they must be pretty happy to be back in the school, and I imagine many of you are too, and I can only put out to the universe that we can remain back in our schools. We might have less time with our students. I know here on Long Island, many music teachers really got kind of creamed last year, and you might have been in one of those. So you're going to be looking now at students who need a lot of remediation. If you are a beginning band teacher, you might have lost your entire beginning class. So you've got a lot of making up to do here. And we may feel devalued by our peers in administration. Always we're trying to fight that fight to let everyone know how important music education is. And I would say to join in on our advocacy of music education, we are here to foster the whole child. We are here to foster their positive outlook on life. And we are in a very unique place to do that. So we're going to talk about how we can do that. So I just repurposed this joke to start you guys off with. The Dever whispered to all the 2021 teachers, "You're not strong enough to withstand this storm." And the teachers whispered back, "You apostrophe R-E." So we are resilient. Teachers are resilient. We are stronger than we possibly could know. And I always love this sign. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, except for bears. Bears will kill you. I always had this up in my room, and this just makes the kids laugh. Every poster that you see in my presentation, by the way, is on my website. My website is called teachingpositivity.com. I'm amazed that I actually got that handle there, but I did. So you can find me right there, and I have a little resource for posters for the classroom. So as we get started, we're going to talk um, not about all lollipops and roses positive psychology. We're going to have a more realistic approach that honors that there is a huge place for negative thinking. These books right here, the positive power of negative thinking, um, references how the Stoics would have a thing called negative visualization, where they would start their day and they would imagine all the things that could go wrong. And then when they didn't go wrong, they were quite grateful. Then there's one called Rethinking Positive Thinking by Gabrielle Ottingen. And in this one, she warns us against just wishful thinking, because if we just wish our life away and we don't make a plan, that's actually been proven to be worse than if we never made the wish at all. So in her work, she talks about you make the wish, you determine what the obstacles are. So a little bit like the Stoics' negative visualization, what are my obstacles to my goal? Then you make a plan. But also she talks about the outcome. You do visualize the outcome of your plan, like great athletes do, visualize themselves going over the high bar. And then you come up with a plan. And that too is very, very important to positive psychology. So we don't just wish, and we try not to be toxic. So there's toxic positive psychology, or just toxic positivity. When someone is hurting, you don't want to say, "This too shall pass." You need to acknowledge what's happening to them, acknowledge their hurt. And then when they're in another place, after you've heard them and you've had been empathized with them, then you can start to try to redirect their thoughts to one of a greater perspective. This is a quote from a Colin Powell's book, It Worked for Me, on life and leadership. And in it, he has 12 rules for how he wants you to be a leader. And one of them is, it can be done. Very, very positive. But here's what I love. He says, "I try to be an optimist, but I try not to be stupid." So that's going to be my motto too. Along with, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I think I'm going to add this one. I try to be an optimist, but I try not to be stupid. So I've been teaching a long time, and I'm going to tell you what worked for me, what still works, what I learned a little later in my career when I got into positive psychology, and what I wish I knew a lot earlier. And we're going to start with some lessons learned from Suzuki. And Suzuki was a master violin teacher who lived around the 1900s, the early 1900s. And at that time, people did not really teach everyone. They just taught the gifted music. So Suzuki decided that he really believed everyone could be taught. So he taught Everyone was welcome to his studio. And if you've never heard a Suzuki violin concert, I'm going to play you a little clip of my daughter's Suzuki violin concert. This is the Locust Valley Suzuki School, and my girl is right there. There she is. And just give a listen to this beautiful group. All right. So there, if you've never heard a Suzuki concert, it'll blow your mind. And actually, part of the reason I put my dear, lovely, only daughter into Suzuki violin is because I wanted to see what it was about. I was a band teacher, and I had heard some of the concerts, but I really wanted to see it, and I'm so glad that I did. And it turns out she ended up playing trombone in her jazz band because her mother is a band director, and then she played violin and viola, so she got to have it all. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how Suzuki made it work. So Suzuki says in this book, this is just a wonderful book of quotes from Suzuki. Every child throughout Japan speaks Japanese. For me, that realization was the proverbial light on a moonless night. I just had to put in the exact wording because it's so beautiful. And then he writes, all children without exception flourish in response to skillful teaching. They are born equipped with that potential. So they flourish in response to skillful teaching. So his teaching was incredibly skillful. And he called it teaching with the mother tongue method. So he really, what he did is he heard that everyone could speak Japanese. He knew there were some really crazy dialects in Japan and people could speak them with no problem. So if they could speak the language, he was sure that he could teach them to play the violin. There's a story that says he had a parrot that he taught to speak Japanese, and he figured, well, if I can teach this parrot how to speak Japanese, I can teach anybody anything. Um, Forgive this wordy slide, but his writing is so beautiful, and I just wanted to read a little bit of this here. Humans do not live through wisdom, they live within the magnificent workings of life. If we adopt the innocent heart of a child, our lives, based on a foundation of love, will try to move toward the true, the good, and the beautiful. Another story about his life was that he took in war orphans. And so these are young children who had absolutely nothing. And he would take them in and raise them or foster them until they could find a home. And what he found was that even though these kids had nothing, they had every reason to be completely devastated, they still had a vitality of life. They wanted to learn. He could teach them. They were hungry, and there was a life force inside of them that he recognized. And I think one of the things that sets Suzuki apart is that he talks about this life force. He talks about how grateful he is that he has the opportunity to work with this magnificent life force. So here he says they live within the magnificent workings of life. And this actually is a really crucial, critical part of his philosophy. So I'm going to go down here. The workings of that life, or the force with which it endeavors to live, is far beyond human wisdom. Love that sentence. It's far beyond. Nobody understands it. We all have a different interpretation of what the infinite source of life is. And each and every person who becomes aware of this is compelled to esteem and value children, adults, and even himself more likely. I'm reading this and taking some time with it because I think it's very, very important for all humans to get in touch with that magnificent workings of life, with the grace with which they live. Get in touch with that and use it to fill ourselves up. Be grateful for that and then bring that gratitude out to whatever work that we do. So that is something we don't talk about in pedagogy, particularly. We don't talk about the extreme love and care that we want to treat our fellow humans and our students with. But it's essential. If you think back about what your favorite teacher, right now, just think back about your absolute favorite teacher and picture them in your mind and try to come up with one word that describes them? What's one word that describes them? And if you're feeling so daring, put that one word in the chat for me. So if you see, um, if if you see them in your eye and you try to remember, what did they make you feel like? And there's that famous Maya Angelou quote, no one will remember what you said, but they will always remember what you feel. So keep that word with you as we go through, and we might come back to that word in a moment. And let's see. Here we go. His motto, Dr. Suzuki's motto is every child can be educated, and we've talked about that. If he can teach a parrot to speak Japanese, he can teach every single child. Every child has a potential to reach a high level of skill. Now, he knew that every child wasn't going to be Mozart, but what every child was capable of was way more than what people were expecting. And here's how he did it: daily practicing. We're going to talk about that, always a little tricky. Repetition, playing the same songs over and over again, using the same literature throughout the year so that the kids get to hear the examples of their friends, their older brothers and sisters playing the same songs, quality stuff that everybody should know, and listening to that over and over again, either from the older kids or on recordings, are the keys to a child's musical success. The other key is you model. You always, always model. And I don't know if you can look at Dr. Suzuki's face. And I've seen so many pictures of him with this face where he really is, he's kind of grinning with that joy of life, with knowing that he's kind of taking care of all of the hearts of all those little kids in front of him. And they're so little. And what he can do just is amazing. So you want to not only model your playing, and I do think as music teachers, we need to model more. And you probably have noticed if you pick up your instrument and you start to play, the entire room gets quiet. They could be buzzing around, but you start to play, they want to hear you. So it's just also really good for crowd control if you're starting to play. So model all the time, use recordings all the time, and accompany whenever you can. Always at a Suzuki meeting or class, I guess, you'd have two classes. You'd have a class with just your teacher, individual class, and then you'd have the group class, which looked very similar to this, with the teacher in the front playing along, modeling. And there's always a pianist there, giving a tonal center so that the kids can make sense out of what their music is going to fit in with. So one of the reasons I love smart music, and I am a huge smart music fan, is that you always have an accompaniment. It's always there, whether you can play piano or not. You've got it with smart music, and that to me is the reason that every single music teacher should be using smart music. Um, this I learned, talk less, play more, from John O'Reilly, who's written a lot of early young band music, and was a native on Long Island, where I'm from. So he said when a clinic that I went with his was that we need to accompany all the time. You know, hot cross bun sounds so much better if you just sit there and play along with it, to give them the tonal center. Dr. Richard Bruno would say the same thing when he was talking about his jump right in method, where you're always playing and always accompanying. And then, of course, Aaron Burr in Hamilton, that just reopened, said talk less and smile more. So now we're going to go and talk about positive psychology. And in case you're not quite sure what it is, I'm going to let you know. So in 1998, a professor or a psychologist named Martin Seligman, who was at the University of Pennsylvania, happened to be the president of the American Psychological Association. And for the term of his presidency, he decided that he was going to have this be the year of positive psychology. And he was saying that before this, a lot of psychology was based on what was wrong with people and a diagnosis, how to fix them, what kind of pill to give them, instead of focusing on what makes people flourish, what makes people thrive. So, positive psychology, the term coined in 1998, also coined a little bit by Maslow earlier than that, but Seligman actually really took the ball and ran. Focuses on cultivating happiness, strength, self-esteem, optimism. One wonderful thing about it is his early work, he went and examined all the wisdom traditions and religions that he could find to find out what they had in common. Fascinating work. Came up with 24 character strengths that pretty much all across the board, all the wisdom traditions honor. And that work is great. This is not for this talk, but it's called VIA, Virtues in Action. And I'm not sure what the A is, but they have a wonderful character survey that you can take, that your friends can take. And it's really wonderful to see what they think your strengths are. And you try to work with your strengths. You can work with your kids' strengths, but that's another talk. All righty, let me get back over here. I'm going to tell you an early positive psychology study that made a big difference to me. And this was reported in the Chicago Tribune in 1995. And there were a bunch of doctors, and they were split in two halves. One half was actually given a bag of candy to thank them for participating in the study, and the other half was given nothing. They were given a fictional patient. They were given all the symptoms. They were given a false diagnosis from another hospital, and then they had to come up with the right diagnosis. The doctors who had the candy were 17% more likely to give the right diagnosis. That's a lot more. I mean, it's not huge, but it's amazing. The candy, something about the candy. And the woman who was reporting on the study, her name is Dr. Alice Eisen, wrote this in the Chicago Tribune. When people feel happy, they have better access to more varied material in their memory. They are more creative problem solvers because their minds are more alive and they are less easily confused. So we're going to come back to that. And this is the reason why we want to work on having a positive classroom. Because if our kids feel happy, if they feel safe, um, they will have better access to more varied material in their memory, and that's what we're going for. Their little neurons are all going to be sparking up in their head if they're happy. And I think this also explains, I don't know about all around the country, but here on Long Island, Jolly Ranchers were a really big thing. I did not believe in giving I taught elementary band. I do not believe in giving candy to kids, but oh my gosh, it works so well. So these Jolly Ranchers apparently really work well. They would agree with this study. One of the rock stars in the positive psychology world is Angela Duckworth. She's charming, she's brilliant, she's eloquent, she's she's got it all. And so she had this New York Times bestseller called Grit, where she talks about how grit trumps talent. So it really, the people who succeed, yeah, they might have some talent, but what they have is passion and perseverance over time. She is a rock star. We're going to talk about another rock star called Dr. Laurie Santos. And Dr. Laurie Santos has a class at Yale that you can take for free on Coursera called The Science of Well-Being. It's a fabulous class. You can take this Ivy League class for free. You won't regret a minute of it. And they both, Angela Duckworth and Dr. Laurie Santos, have podcasts. If you're interested in this, and they're always talking about studies and what works and what doesn't work to make us happier. And they're both wonderful people. So, so Angela says grit trumps talent, and grit can be taught. And one factor, she says, is optimism. So the optimism, the belief among teachers and students that they have the ability to change and improve, basically a growth mindset. So we're going to be talking about growth mindset. And how can we implement that in the classroom easily? What are some nice, easy tools that we can just put right in our classroom? And students of optimistic teachers outperform less optimistic teachers. No big surprise there, but we do want to work on our optimism levels. And how do we work on our optimism levels? We see sort of a paragon of optimism with Dr. Suzuki. He was a master of optimism. Every child can, every child will, every child can. Um, and so he basically was talking about growth mindset. Those brains can all change. They can all be taught to do something. And so growth mindset is one way that we can teach optimism if we teach our students and ourselves that they have the capacity, the capability to improve if they're given the opportunity to practice. And then we're going to talk a lot about practice. We actually really have to talk about practice. And I was guilty Actually, I used to really, really harp on the kids to practice. I was really, really hard on them. And then I had my daughter. And then I tried to teach my beautiful daughter and tried to get her to practice. And it was so hard. It was just so hard. And so then I kind of like eased up in my class. I eased up on, like, okay, it's all right. You didn't practice. But what we have to do actually, and I regret to this day that I did this, we just have to keep going, just like a great sports coach. Pete Carroll is a famous football coach. He actually saw Angela Duckworth give her TED talk on how to develop grit. And Angela ends her TED talk and she goes, we're not really sure how to teach grit, but we're working on it. And Pete Carroll's watching this and he goes, hey, football coaches, we know how to teach grit. This is all we do. So he called up Angela Duckworth and they had a conversation. You can actually see it online. She went over there and they collaborated together and talked about how does he teach growth? How does he teach grit? And they have a culture of practice. They just have a culture of practice. Everything is practice. Practice is everything. So same with Suzuki, practices everything. And then the gratitude, which Suzuki was grateful that he had this opportunity to shape these young children's lives, that he was grateful for that. And actually just having a gratitude practice as we as teachers can really shift our brain around too to be more optimistic. Angela Duckworth just happened to send me an email the other day. She'll send you an email too. If you just sign up for her website, you will see she'll send anyone an email. But she writes so beautifully. I love getting her emails. This email was about acceleration is more effective than remediation. So it's not exactly what on the topic, but it is on the topic. They did a analysis of 100,000 schools, and it was a recent analysis, and they compared the schools that were taking their kids who had lost a lot of learning during the pandemic, and they were giving them traditional education, which was sort of remedial. They were going back and they were doing the basics and they weren't really expecting too much of them because they'd had all this time off. Then they compared it with a accelerated style of teaching where they just took those same kids and they said, guys, we're going to go twice as fast this year because we had to miss so much instruction, and you're all going to catch up. Everybody's going to do it. So they took everybody, and they would have, some help, obviously, for the people who needed some help. They would help them as needed, but they expected them to do the same thing. And the schools and the educators who went with that plan achieved far more than the ones who had the typical remediation classics. So she's saying acceleration is more effective than remediation. Remediation, she also says in her email to me and to everyone else, sort of implies that you're broken, that you need to be healed, where acceleration implies that you're a champion. So that mindset that you give the kids, yeah, we're going to accelerate this year. We're going to just we're going to do 2 years in one this year. And having that attitude is extraordinarily helpful. She writes so beautifully. I just wanted to read a little bit about what she writes here. She says, do start this year looking for success stories. As veteran educator Ron Berger reminds us, the secret to motivating kids is to raise expectations and then provide the support needed to meet them. In word and in deed, tell your kids, I'm really excited for you. You're going to race ahead this year. You're going to learn more than you did last year, and you're going to feel so proud. Now, you maybe might not feel those exact words coming out of your mouth, but you would use your own words. But if we unpack what she just said, I'm really excited for you. So you're showing the child that you really care and you really think that they can do this. You're going to race ahead this year. Optimism. You're going to end. I believe in you. You're going to learn more than you did last year. Same optimism. And you're going to feel so proud. Celebration is a big topic in positive psychology, and some people think it's a little, it should be right up there with gratitude and mindfulness. A man named BJ Fogg, a psychologist or psychiatrist at Stanford University, thinks that those should be the big three, because without celebration, we lose our motivation to do stuff, so that we need to really take the time and celebrate our kids' good work. All right. Then she signs everything with grit and gratitude, Angela. She does a symposium before COVID. It was every summer in Philadelphia, and it's fabulous. She'll get all sorts of all the people who write all the positive psychology books come, and it used to be free, but now it costs a little money. But it's really great if you're into this kind of thing. So she would agree, since we're accelerating our education, we learn best when we're stretched out of our comfort zone. Some people say life begins when you step out of your comfort zone. And how I used to do it was I would have unison tunes with challenges or variations to keep everyone involved and motivated. And I would give out the unison tune to the whole band. Then I'd give out the variation to the whole band. And because I had SmartMusic, the truly like the best way to supply support for advanced material. So awesome. You can give your advanced kids another little thing to reach for. And I played the same tune every year in my Halloween band. This is my beautiful Halloween band right here. Um, the tune that we would play, we'd have a couple tunes, but one of them was Edgar Winter's Frankenstein. Edgar Winter's Frankenstein, the melody has three notes. I'm playing the clarinet. If they want to learn a few more notes, everyone in the band can play that. I could teach someone on the first day how to play that. Then the challenge, second challenge, I would write that out. I would model it. I would play it. These kids are in fifth grade, and I would have a whole, about a dozen of them playing it. And then I'd have all these other kids trying to play it. And then I say, yeah, as soon as you get it up to speed, you can play it too. Or you can play the beginning of it. So you do that to keep them motivated. I had an arrangement that I did of Deck the Halls. Bum ba dum bum 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 bum. Everyone learned to play that, and then the variation. And then I would give that to the advanced kids, and then you would just put them together at the concert. Someday I want to write the theme and variations band book, because I also think we should have more unison tunes. Unison tunes are great. Everybody gets the melody. Suzuki knew that. Everybody, of course, they were all playing violin, so it's a little easier. So now, how do we teach growth mindset? What are the best way to teach it? I used to go this Henry Ford quote, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Great, awesome quote. If any of you guys have ever tried to teach that sign, especially to an elementary school, you'll be talking about it for 15 minutes. They'll argue with you. They don't understand it. They don't get it. But then finally they get it, and it's an awesome sign. This one's a little easier. Impossible turns into possible. Unable is able. And I would have these signs in my room. So I have heard now, because I've studied positive psychology, that there is a better way that you can do this. Um, and if you can put in just what they call, psychologists would call this an intervention, where you just take your class and you teach them a concept that you want them to know. In this case, I want them to know about growth mindset, that your brain is malleable, that as you repeat through repetition, you're going to create these synapses between your neurons. You're going to cover them with a myelin sheath that's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it's going to be faster and faster, and you're just going to be awesome at this. Carol Dweck is the rock star for growth mindset. She did an hour intervention where she taught some math kids about how our brains change and can grow, and how you're not set. You don't have a fixed mindset. Your brain is actually going to change as you work on it. After, I think this was oh dear, I'm forgetting, 6 weeks or 6 months of instruction. But the GPAs for the group that had the growth mindset intervention went quite a bit up, by about a half of a point here. And then I guess math in seventh grade generally goes down. That's why this one went so far down, because it usually gets harder. So there was a clear increase if they were just taught a little bit about your brain being malleable. So I want to introduce you to this really like killer awesome site. It's called the Learner Lab. And this guy, Trevor Reagan, came from the sports world. And I'm very, very interested in the sports world, because I think we music educators could learn a lot about team building and spirit and esprit de corps, and just a culture of excellence from the sports world. So this guy, he is so fabulous. His materials are so beautifully presented, and you can just throw a little bit of it on in your classroom and talk about how you want your kids to grow and to challenge and to see how much better they can get if they practice. This one that I like a lot that's in my handout, and at the end of our talk today, I'll show you my handout. I'll give you a little QR code. You can just click, point your phones at it, and you can get it, or you can find it on my website, teachingpositivity.com. And you'll find the link to this jungle tiger. It's so good. So here's the zoo tiger. He does it. He gets fed. He doesn't go anywhere, and he's very, very safe. And then here's the jungle tiger, and he goes hunting, and he finds shelter, and he fights with people, and he protects his family. And who do the kids want to be? Do they want to be a zoo tiger, or do they want to be a jungle tiger? They want to be the jungle tiger. He's got a lot more fun. So just like cute little ways to show them that they can grow if they challenge themselves. I used to put up pictures in my classroom. Here's Arnold Schwarzenegger, a very young, rather nice looking Arnold Schwarzenegger. Here's pictures of neurons that you can just show kids. Here's a baby at birth and what their neurons look like and how you can see they're not connected. And then by age 6, when they've been talking and interacting, all this is connected. Here's a poor animal with no toys in his cage. I'm hoping this is a representation. And here is a brain of an animal living with other animals and they have toys. So you can just kind of show them that. But my favorite intervention is the yet sign. And so forgive me if some of you guys know about the yet sign, but if you don't, you just take this sign, the yet sign, put it up in your classroom. And then when somebody can't do something, you just point to it. You don't even have to say a thing. So they can't do it yet. You just add the word yet to whatever they've said they can't do. And if you do this in your classroom, you'll get to the point where the kids will do this for you. Like you don't have to say a thing. A kid says, I can't do it. And another kid will point to the yet sign. So this so much faster than the Henry Ford quote that says, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. They just, hey, you think they can. They should think they can. This is just my colleague Andrew Brunson put Betty the Yeti up right on his yet sign is below somewhere. Um, Another thing Carol Dweck says, praise effort, not talent. If you praise talent, it's been found that kids won't want to do challenging things because they don't want you to change your opinion of them, like that they're so uber talented. But if you praise effort, they will actually pick harder tasks. So this is, we're not going to have time to go into that, but just a little thing to think about as you're out there and you've got with your kids. Try not to tell them, wow, you got a really good natural talent. Tell them you worked really hard on that. Another little hack, positive psychology hack, replace I am nervous with I am excited. Same thing happens to your body when you're nervous or when you're excited. So if you've got a kid with severe stage fright, try this with them and just say, I'm excited. Another thing you can do, there's the Amy Cuddy power pose, where you just stand up like Superwoman for a minute, she says, and she claims that it'll give people confidence to do something that they're slightly afraid to do. You can use it yourself before a concert if you like. Some people do it in the bathroom. The other thing positive psychology tells us to do is connect with people. They want us to make as many connections as we possibly can. A lot of work on that is from a psychologist named Barbara Fredrickson. She has a book called Love 2.0. Love 1.0, she says, is our love for our family, our loved ones, the people in our inner circle. But Love 2.0 is the connections that we have with everybody else, including our students. And how, if we can maximize the number of moments that we can connect with them, everyone will be happier. They'll be happier. They'll do more for you. You'll be happier with them. One thing I do like about SmartMusic too, a little commercial, is that you have a comment section in SmartMusic and you can just connect with them right there in SmartMusic. It's just another place to do it. This is a guy who wrote a book called P is for Pirate, or Teach Like a Pirate. It says, build rapport. Every minute counts, even those minutes around the edges. Each minute spent informally with a student is worth 10 hours of class time. I don't believe this is researched, but I believe it's probably pretty true. Where does that magic happen before and after class at Extra Help? In the comment sections of SmartMusic. One thing I was doing that I regret doing was I was entering in a lot of data on the computer after the kids left or right as they were coming in, and I was losing the golden time, losing those golden moments. So I had to figure out a way to take attendance and do things without sacrificing that golden time. This is just something that I have in my handout to get to know your kids. Just I wrote here, what would you like me to know about you? How can I best help you with your instruments? You'll get all sorts of wonderful answers there. And then tell them something about yourself. Right here, I asked my kids, what about me is not true? I said, I was born in Japan. I'm a professional flutist, sometimes play accordion in a German band. I sometimes play the organ in a church. And my daughter is adopted from China. So they're all sitting there talking about which one it is. And the answer is, I do not play the accordion in a German band. But it's just a little game you can play that gives them a little information about you so that they feel they're connected to you. I saw this on Facebook, this handle with care sign. If your family's experiencing difficulties, I would like to provide additional support at school. Just write me an email and say handle with care. This is in on my website if you'd like this to hand out. I just thought that was so beautiful. Communicate with your kids. Just make sure you know your students. Phone home, email home, just do it. I know a lot of teachers that kept saying, oh, I tried to phone home, but I couldn't get through. Just get through. It's much easier than once you make that call, like you ever notice, like, oh, that wasn't so bad. So just do it. Now, what you say, your students will repeat. Our words are incredibly powerful. Proverbs says we are snared by the words of our mouth. Once I had a band that I told was bad. I was young. We had a horrible rehearsal. And I think, oh my gosh, guys, that was a horrible rehearsal. And then they're walking out and I hear them go, oh, we're bad. They had a horrible rehearsal. They were saying exactly what I said. And I was so wrong. I should have said, don't worry, guys. I know we can do this. We just can't do it yet. I was young. So whatever you say to your kids, they're going to repeat. And your words are very, very powerful. So don't underestimate the quality of your words. And just for an example, I have this shopping cart here. I'm driving around in my car and I have Sirius radio and I'm listening to Joel Osteen. I love to listen to pastors, inspirational speakers. And Joel Osteen is saying, we are all people of excellence and people of excellence take their shopping carts back. And I said to myself, they do? They take their shopping carts back? And I, to this day, take my shopping cart back because, hey, I want to be a person of excellence. I don't even know this guy. I don't know Joel Osteen, but his words were powerful to me, and I wanted to be that person of excellence. So, whatever we say, just know they hear us. Sarcasm and negativity have no place in the classroom. I have no data on this. As a matter of fact, there's a little data saying that some students of sarcastic teachers actually do pretty well, but I would just leave it. And this is just a funny thing. I think there must be a school someplace where musicians go to learn harmony, counterpoint, and sarcasm. If you say it's hard, it becomes hard. So if you tell a kid going over the break is hard, it's hard. If you don't mention it, they just will practice it. When I was going over the break, no one told me. I thought my clarinet was broken, and I just kept practicing, and one day it worked. You can say try saying this skill just takes time and practice to master. Going over the break takes 2 weeks. Don't worry, practice. Take 2 weeks, you'll be there. This is just in the front of a Trevor Y book that's just really wonderful. It's a matter of time, patience, and intelligent work. Put that up in your room and then just refer to it and just keep referring to it so that you're building that culture. This is a crazy good video that you can show your kids. It takes about a minute. I'm just going to show the beginning of it.
Some people are so good at what they do, you doubt you could ever be as great. Are they born with it? Not at all. Research shows that you can become an expert too with the right kind of practice. Expert practice has 3 steps. First, take the thing you want to do well, break it down into smaller parts, and pick one part that's just a little harder than what you can do now. Second, practice that one skill with absolute concentration. Even short practice sessions are powerful if you focus completely. Third, seek feedback on your performance and reflect on that feedback. Now, expert practice is not always easy, but as you perfect many small skills, you begin to see how the whole improves to create dazzling mastery. Great musicians Doctors, writers, and athletes all use expert practice. They use it as students too. You can become great at whatever you envision. What will you choose to master?
So that would be called an intervention. You would play that. I think that was a minute and a half. And just to keep reminding the kids of the importance of how to practice, that was a beautiful display of expert practice or deliberate practice. To require a practice record or not to require a practice record, that is the question. I can tell you when I stopped doing them because I thought that maybe they were bad, my kids practice less. So measuring does help us achieve our goals. Weight Watchers knows that. Noom, the weight place online, knows that. Um, People who are walking in a study, if they wear a pedometer, will walk 1 mile more every week than the people who don't wear a pedometer. I'm experimenting on my practice record with this because we all know about how parents, unfortunately, sometimes do not tell the truth on practice records. So here I'm having the kids check this box. I verify that the above statements are true. I'm just going to try this. I'm not sure, but I thought it was a good idea. All right. And also, I have come up with the Just Show Up plan. So if you have a habit that you want your kids to do, see if you can make it into the tiniest little thing. Like, for example, if you want them to practice, simply say, all right, we're going to make this habit so small that you're going to be able to do this. All I want you to do is sit in your chair and get your instrument out. That's it. And then you're going to put a check on your habit tracker or on your practice record. That's it. Just show up. And I learned this from a yoga teacher who was saying she had students who didn't know, how are they going to have a yoga practice? How are they going to do it every day? And the teacher said, just roll out your mat and show up. So if you are interested in a show up plan, um, these books right here, the Atomic Habits, Tiny Habits, they're wonderful books that talk about if we want to change anything in our life to make our lens for the better, we need to make little tiny habits and make them, and then we can stick to them and then never miss twice. It's another thing that's been proven. Once you miss twice, your habit thing goes down the tubes. Now, I'm just going to show you a couple comics that I love. I want to skip ahead to the part where I'm awesome. This is from Better for Worse. Come on, Mike, how are you going to get anywhere with this thing if you don't practice? I do practice, Uncle Phil. I practice all the time. Okay, show me something you've practiced. And then you can see that. I used to have that on my practice record. Fill your room up with things that inspire you. Just fill it up. This encouragement was always on my door. I have all of these on my website. Find something that makes you laugh because when you laugh, your brain is going to be more open and more malleable than when you are not laughing. Keep calm, return my pencils. I do a practice-a-thon that I run, and someone was making a sign, and I just love this, so I put it up in my instrument room. We didn't put it up in the hallway, but we did put it in the instrument room. This is just the funniest thing, I think, myself. You can tell I was an elementary band director, and who knew that Abraham Lincoln played the trombone? I did not know. Do or do not, there is no try. Now, there's a sadness here, is that I was going to talk to you about the things I regret, but I'm going to have to talk about them really fast. What I really regret is that I did not take care of myself. I did not bring my energy level to its A game when I saw 100 kids at 7:45 a.m. in the morning. I was tired. I had spent the night reading my book till I got to the end, or watching TV, or going to late night rehearsals. So what I would say to you, and I'm going to have to say it in way quicker than I would encourage you to fill your vessel, fill yourself up. We are in the serving profession. So if we are empty, we just don't have those reserves to give to these beautiful, loving things that are in our hands. You cannot serve from an empty vessel. And I'm going to then I'm going to zip through and hopefully I'll give another presentation on all of this about how to change the lens with which you look at. You could do 3 gratitudes a night. You could journal. You could exercise. You could meditate. You could do random acts of kindness. There's an incredible TED Talk that I want you to watch because we're running out of time and I can't tell you much about it. The man's name is Sean Aker. It's called The Happy Secret to Better Work. It's in my notes. Please, 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 if you watch nothing else, watch that And then there's going to be one other thing that I want you to watch. Oh, this is just interesting, really interesting. You only need 5,649 steps to ward off depression. And forgive me for zipping through all this. Oh, right, but I will get to this end right here. Oh, this is a good, that's a nice slide. So forgive me. Here's what I want. Here's another video I want you to watch when you're home. This is on the Pygmalion effect. And this is our labels and expectations become self-fulfilling prophecies. This is a beautifully produced video on this lab called Learner Lab that I told you about that had the beautiful growth mindset materials. Trevor Reagan is his name. This man was a Harvard professor, and he did some very famous studies. One was with rats. He labeled half the rats smart and half the rats dumb, just randomly. And then he had his students come in and take care of them when they were labeled. And then after a week, he ran them through mazes, and the kids who um, the rats who were labeled smart ran faster than the rats that were labeled dumb, because the students' actions were slightly different. They took care of them just a little bit better because they were smart. And that is kind of what happens to our students. The end of his paper here, he wrote, imagine if we're doing this to rats, what would happen if um, we did this to students, if we tried this on students? So a principal was reading his study, and she invited him to come to her school, where they did another experiment where they labeled 25 random kids bloomers. He gave them a test, and he said it was going to find out who the bloomers were. So they just took 25 names and rated them bloomers. By the end of the year, those kids had done about 2 years worth of work in the regular 1 year because they had been labeled bloomers. So the labels that we put on our kids, it's very, very important. And how we think about our kids, how we think about these precious little beings in front of us, will affect how we take care of them, which is why we need to keep ourselves as positive as we possibly can, so that we can give them, so that we can serve from the overflow of our overflowing vessel. They did these studies in prisons, in management, in the military, and they come up with the same thing, that teacher or leader expectations actually become realized. So this Robert Rosenthal, he said, the label we should use is learner. It's the best word ever. He's so cute. You have to watch this video. It's the best word ever. Think of all of your students as learners. Think of you as a learner if there's some part that you have not quite conquered yet. And I am going to go over, and we're going to skip all this, but I did love these plants right here, and I hated the other plants, and you can see the difference. Look at that. It's crazy. This appears to work on plants. It even works on rice too, but if I can come back, I'm going to talk about this next time. So by controlling our thoughts about each child, by thinking of each child as a learner, our actions will be different. And like Suzuki said, every child can learn. And if we mess up, we just say, oh well, and we start again. If we look for the best in our students, our administrators, our colleagues, we will see it. If we look for the worst, we will see it. What you look for, you shall find, says my friend Marla. So in the end, it's all about love. Love for our profession, love for our students, love for ourselves. And I want to end with this quote from David Brooks, which I think is so beautiful. Kids turn their heads towards love. They are like flowers in the sun. And I would like to thank SmartMusic, thank Billy for hosting, thank all of you guys for, if you've made it to the end, thank you with all my heart for spending that precious time with me today. I've hoped this helped. If you would like to email me any questions, I know we're going to have a Q&A, but if you prefer to email me them, feel free. My email is easy, peggyrakas@gmail.com. You can aim your cameras or your phones at my little QR code to get our handout, or go to teachingpositivity.com. And Billy, I think we'll open it up for some questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Peggy, for that amazing presentation. That is such a valuable topic. So thank you for that. I'm going to drop a few links in the chat real quick. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop those in the Q&A box, and we'll take a look. First of all, as promised, I have the certificate of attendance here. second, I have a survey. We would love to hear your feedback and any input you have regarding future topics you'd like to see in webinars. And we have another link here for some of our recent pre-recorded webinars and smart music trainings for the school year. And then, as Peggy mentioned a few times, I have her website here, teachingpositivity.com. And yeah, with that, I would just like to thank Peggy one more time for that inspiring presentation and thank everyone for attending today.
Thanks to all of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.